Well, yeah, if it gets to a point where it's just where it just needs, I mean, right now this is just like I said, that I'm trying to build this on a narrative based on creation. And then whatever spills out of that, we deal with that and then go back to creation. So this is how I'm trying to do with this.
So one thing we could do after you share some stuff, I could show you my creation prophecy that it's in a post I haven't finished. You've never heard me say that.
Yeah, never.
And depending on where you want to go, that might be some help on that.
Yeah, it might
Because
be.
you've seen one part of it where I bring out how the lunar Sabbath is brought out, or the lunar cycle change is brought out in the
Yeah.
creation prophecy.
So here's where I start. The basic thing that I lay out at the beginning. God's time was established in the beginning, as was the way for keeping a track of advancing days, weeks, months, and years. Genesis 1 through 2. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and that's actually the first day of creation.
Right, it's new moon
The
day.
new moon day.
Yeah, in fact, that book I started reading, but I only got a little bit. It actually brings out how the same Hebrew word is used to refer to new moon day right there in Genesis and other places in the Tanakh.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I knew it was new moon day. I didn't know it was using the same Hebrew word, and so that just makes it more obvious. And that's in the Lunar Sabbath group. In fact, I took a screenshot of that little paragraph.
Yeah. So in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Keep these verses in mind as we move toward the section where God creates the lights in the heavens. There's a clue here for when the month begins. Even here, though, we see the beginning of the activity of the first day. So let's go on. Genesis 1:3 through 5. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called light, and called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Here we have our first day in total. It starts with God doing his work. Then there is an evening. Then there is a morning. Then the sun comes up again. Then when the sun comes up again, the old day is done. Days are counted morning to morning. In order to understand this more properly, we need to also understand the Hebrew concept of night watches. In scripture, nighttime is divided into 4 3-hour watches. The evening watch is from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. The morning watch is from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. When it is stated that the evening and the morning were the first day, this is a reference to the specific watch. In other words, each day begins in the morning at sunup, goes through the night watches until the sun comes up again. Let's go through the other days. This might just be a fluke. After all, Hebrews measure their days evening to evening, right? Genesis 1:8, and God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Genesis 1:12 through 13, and the earth brought forth grass, the herb yielding seed after its kind, and tree yielding fruit whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the third day. I could go on, but the pattern is clearly repeating itself. Besides, yeah. Okay.
So since you're paused a little bit,
yeah.
I don't know how much you want to get into other details, but I did a post in the Book of Mormon where the Book of Mormon shows that the day starts in the morning.
Yeah, that's actually later. I'm about to go into that.
Okay.
Actually, as evidence that these people actually understood this concept.
Right. And I have 2 posts that I've summarized from others that show tons of Tanakh verses that show the only way to make it work is if the day starts in the morning. My favorite is manna.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to cite that. So let me call my thing back up again.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Oh, and one thing I do on the evening to morning, I kind of bring out how it's the first night watch through the last night watch. And then
Mhm.
also how, if you think evening to morning is day, there's no way to get that to be a full day.
I probably need to add that last bit.
It's just a thought, depending how
Because
thorough you want to be.
I kind of have the idea that you have to go through all the night watches already in there, I think.
Right. So the thing is, the furthest morning could be is the afternoon.
Mhm.
And that is up to afternoon is not, from evening to afternoon is not a full day.
Right.
There's no way that you can take morning to be anything past the afternoon or
Mhm.
high noon.
Exactly.
So the only way to, of course, we're on the same page on this. The only way to read in a day into that is proof texting.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well,
Okay, so there we go. I could go on, but the pattern is clearly repeating itself. Besides, there's something significant that happens on the fourth day that I think is made more clear in Moses and Abraham. But I'm sure that people are wondering if there is actually evidence in the Bible and Book of Mormon that people counted their days from sunup to sunup. There is. Let's get into it. 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 32, and they took Asahel and buried him in the sepulchre of his father, which is in Bethlehem. And Joab and his men went all night, and they came to Hebron at break. And then I have my own thing here, beginning, or when one day is counted as having broken from the last of day. Judges 19:25 through 27. And the men would not hearken unto him. So the man took his concubine and brought her forth unto them, and they knew her and abused her all night until the morning. And when the day began to spring, they let her go. Then came the woman in the dawning, beginning of the day, and fell down at the door of the man's house where her Lord was, till it was light. And her Lord rose up in the morning and opened the doors of the house and went to go on his way. And that's when I stopped there, because at that point, it just gets bizarre.
that other part, the first part was bizarre. So
Yeah, but it gets even more bizarre after that.
yeah, well, yeah.
But the point is that it wasn't day again until he rose up in the morning and opened the doors of his house and went to
Yeah,
go on.
I know. It's just, it's not a favorite verse of mine to bring up, but yeah.
Yeah, well, and
Just the other stuff that's going on in it is just not nice.
right.
Anyways,
But guess what? That's going to be our world soon enough.
it kind of already is. What are you talking about?
Well, yeah, I mean it is, but yeah,
Anyways.
it's going to be less escapable.
Yeah.
Numbers 11:32. And people stood up all that day and all that night and all the next day, and they gathered the quails. He that gathered least gathered 10 homers, and they spread them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. Notice that the next day is separated from the night. That's something that I put in there. Exodus 16:22 to 25. And it came to pass that on the sixth day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, This is that which the Lord has said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye shall bake today, and seethe that ye shall seethe. And that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until morning. And they laid it up until morning, as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein. And then Moses said, Eat that today, for today is the Sabbath of the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field. This one is really clear. It is instruction given on the sixth day and carried over into the seventh day, or Sabbath. Morning is mentioned as the beginning of the Sabbath day.
Yeah, and it's not here another verse, but in this history it states they could collect manna up till the morning.
Right.
Which if you can't collect sticks on the Sabbath, why could you go collect manna? You couldn't, as in because it wasn't there. But
Yeah.
they had up to the morning, meaning that's when the day starts, right?
Yeah. Oh, is that in an earlier verse?
I forget the verse. We can go look real quick if you want.
Yeah, let's take a look at that.
Okay. All
Since
right.
I've got my scriptures up on my phone, let's take a look. And this is in, if it's in the same chapter, Exodus chapter 16.
Yeah. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. Go here. Of course, this is basically just quoting it. Oh, oops.
Yeah, that's fine.
So in the morning you shall see the majesty, like that's 6:17 with I mean
7.
7 blah. That one's referring to when it's going to start, I believe. We'd have to go double
Yeah.
check. But it started in the morning, not in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
In the morning. Let no man leave it until the next morning. He had up until the morning to collect it. 16:19.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it left it until the next morning and it bred worms.
Yep.
But
When the
'cause
sun
that's-
waxed hot, it melted.
Well, the sun's hot at high noon. It was, and morning is when it had that problem. Morning doesn't have the heat problem that you're bringing.
Yeah,
Oh,
morning
well,
is
but down to the
when
next
you're when
verse.
you're in those when you're in those regions. Morning's the only time of the day that's not terribly hot.
Yeah. So I guess that would have been the previous days then on verse 21.
Mm-hmm.
The 6 twice as much. 16:23. Tomorrow the next is the rest of the Sabbath. Bake
Mhm.
until you bake what you will bake today, and seeth what you seeth. It now remaineth over a layup that you kept until tomorrow morning.
Yeah, until the morning. Yeah, well, that's a new day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the one I liked, what was it? Was it 7? You know, no.
In the morning shall you see the
Oh,
that's
I think the 16:19 is the best one for,
Yeah.
you know, you had up till the morning, but we let's see.
I'll add that. I'll add that in. Mm.
Okay, well, that's just looking at these highlights, but I think the best one is verse 19, but I mean, it's kind of throughout it, to be honest, but
What's that?
it's kind of throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, it's throughout all of chapter 16. It's a big deal.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the problem is people don't want to read it because people everywhere love their orthodox false traditions.
Right.
I see that everywhere.
And then I selected 3 items from the Book of Mormon showing that they went showing their knowledge of the fact that the day is kind of morning to morning.
Sure. You want to pick them all that I have in here?
Mosiah 24, 16 through 20, First Nephi 16, 9 through 12, and Alma 30, 51, 32 through 52, 1. And that one's really awesome because that actually leads you right into the whole thing about, oh, so the new year isn't the Gregorian New Year. because
Yeah.
otherwise these people would have to be down in South and Central America.
Um,
And
yeah.
everybody there is everybody in that group is a believer in the Heartland theory. So
Oh, okay.
it's a good
Another
sign.
thing, when I wrote this, I didn't catch this, but this contradicts the false tradition that the year starts in the fall, like the Orthodox push. Which
Well, I mean,
or
the
actually
biggest,
states spring, but look here, it went from the last month to the first month, and that's when the year increased, showing
and,
that's
but,
in the
and
spring.
right. But at the same time, it's also looking at this, another clue that it's definitely not in January is right there in verse 33. It came to pass that when the night had come, Tiankim and his servants stole forth and went out by night and went into the camp of Malachi, and behold, sleep had overpowered them because of their much fatigue, which was caused by the labors and heat of the day.
Sure, yeah, I hadn't caught that part, the heat of the day. Of course, I wasn't, I'm not, I think disproving January as the start of the year is pretty easy, but yes, that's a very good one right there. Heat of the day.
Yeah.
That you don't really get heat of the day in winter.
No, yeah, the heat of the day is quite standable in wintertime.
Yeah. So that's a
Um,
good point.
and so my commentary on that one is this one is really an important timekeeper on multiple levels. Again, on the last night of the old year, Tiankim was a busy boy and Amalickiah died. And when the sun rose, it was a new day. The first day of the new year. The day before had been a hot day, so either they were located in South or Central America, or the new year wasn't measured from January. And then the truth is given to us in the Bible. And from there, I had turned back to the Passover being in the first month of the year.
Yeah, it's early Exodus. I forget where it's.
It's actually, I'm actually going from Leviticus 23,
Oh, okay. Well,
where it actually pinpoints Passover and unleavened and the Feast of Unleavened Bread in the first month. That's why I'm using that.
okay. So Leviticus 23 then, right?
Yeah, Leviticus 23, 4 through 8.
Well, I think there's one in Exodus that states this is the start of the year, the spring.
Okay, yeah, if I can find that, then
Well, here, let me find it for you real quick.
okay. Would have to be after 20.
Oh, I'm pretty sure that's in Exodus. Um, ah, it's Exodus 12:2.
Oh, it's 12 too. Okay. Okay, yes, and here we're actually dealing with when the first Passover is actually celebrated. Now that's pretty cool.
No, the first one was with Adam.
Well, but I'm talking about the first one recorded. It's not actually recorded
Okay.
with that.
Sure. I get you.
Yeah.
But I I I would even disagree about the recorded because when Lot was taken out, if you read it, it doesn't come out and say it, but there's enough little clues that shows that was Passover.
Right.
Anyways,
But I'm talking about
it's the first directly one that's
yeah, I'm talking
stated.
about a direct, uncontrovertible. They're talking about Passover here, folks.
Yeah, no, sure. I'll agree with that statement. But the moon happened before then. And then
Okay,
I don't
so
know if
let's
you want to
see.
bring this out.
This month shall be the beginning of months. It shall be a first month.
Barley couldn't be used to determine the year because it had just burned.
Right,
I can show you scriptures for that one too.
right.
So that in itself goes against barley being used. Of course, there's Genesis 1:14, but anyways. I don't want to sidetrack us too much from your stuff.
Yeah, Genesis 1:14, that's kind of where I'm trying to get back to, but I have to establish. I'm right now because I've opened up that whole thing about the year. Now I need to establish the year
Sure.
before going back. And so that's where I am at right now. So that's and then I'm going to go back into signs and the signs and Moedim. Yeah. So yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So well, what I see here is this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. 12/2, which will be the first month of the year. It doesn't exactly state that it begins on the new moon, but it's still
no, it doesn't.
Verse. It's still a good verse.
Yeah. It doesn't say as much as you might want to say, but when you put it in the context, because then we know it's in the spring because this has to do with Passover.
Right. Yeah. So if I put this in as a supporter to what I have here with Leviticus 23:4-8, the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which he shall proclaim in their seasons, the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread to the Lord. 7 days shall you must eat unleavened bread, and etc. etc.
Sure.
Verse
Yeah.
11. So yeah. And then put this in as support. This month shall be the beginning of months, and so there we've established the beginning of the year, and now we need to go back and establish that new moon time of creation.
Well,
because that gives the new moon as the beginning of the month.
Sure. Let's just. I wonder if I still have that up. Let me see. Oh, here we go. It's just, I haven't done more. I'm so busy with everything else, but I think it was this one. The related Hebrew words used in the beginning in Genesis 1:1 and Numbers 28:11 in reference to the beginning of the lunar month. Everything was dark on that day, and it was a worship day before the first work day. That's why he wasn't working on new moon days, because it's a non-work day.
Well, it does say that he created the heavens and the earth.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not sure what to do with that. But let's see. Numbers, let's go look at this. And I haven't.
Perhaps it's more of just kind of pulling things together.
I'm not sure what to say about that right now. But let's go look at this. The Hebrews were used for beginning in Genesis 1:1 and Numbers 20, reference to the beginning of a lunar month. Let's go look at that.
Okay, so let's look up Numbers 28:11. And in the beginnings of your months, you shall offer a burnt offering unto the Lord, 2 young bullocks, 1 ram, 7 lambs. The first year.
This has to do with the day-to-day stuff, but this one.
But the
But this
word.
is on the month section of this, because if let me double check notes.
But the point is that the word for beginning is the same in both.
Right. I'm just giving some additional context here.
Yeah.
Because the focus is just that word.
Mhm.
But yeah, this has to, earlier that it was mentioning the day-to-day ones, and then it listed the
At the
Sabbath
beginnings of
ones, and now it's doing the monthly ones. But these are
Yes.
this is the law of Moses, basically.
Yeah, this is from the law of Moses, but it clearly indicates that there's something special about the new moon day.
Right. So, but the thing he's saying is the beginning is, and this is going to be, see, new moon. This is where they
Gosh.
translate it to month instead of new moon.
Yeah.
But so at the beginning, now look at this. At the beginning, those three words comes from one word. This is where a lot of English translators put these extra words in to try to make it make sense. So I mean, it's not necessarily bad. We just need to
Yeah.
keep in mind.
But it's just one word.
Yeah. But let's see, 7 to 18. Now let's go look at it. Genesis 1:1. Oh, come on. Fine, I'll do it here. No, I just, how do I do that? Oh, come on. There we go. Just now go back. Okay. So 7225. 7218.
Seven two one eight.
Oh
Both
yeah,
of them
but
are.
no, see this one's 7225.
Oh, is it? Mhm.
Yeah. Let's go look at the word though. Beginning, chief.
Rosh.
Rosh, head. Yeah. So
Yeah, not the same word. Thought we had something there.
no, they're
But it
actually,
is a good, it's actually still a good connector to.
no, I still kind of like it. It's just might not be as strong, but let's Hebrew roots have roots. So let's see if one's a root of the other. And I
Mhm.
don't know if Bible, because I haven't tried to look into that part. I don't think Bible Hub shows that, to be honest.
And it says here, see Hebrew, see Rosh. Go back down.
Where, right, this, oh, from, oh, there we go, right there, from
From
Rosh.
Rosh. It's from the
Oh, they're
same.
connected. Because
Mhm.
that's the other one right there.
Yep.
And you can see it 7218, just looking at the highlight. So that puts the connection stronger back, right?
But one springs from the other,
Right.
which actually is,
Rosh is the root,
yeah.
because this Reshith is from Rosh. So
Okay. That's actually freaking awesome.
wow.
So yeah, that's something that I can work in, definitely.
I mean, we can. Yeah, and then he brings in Leviticus 23, which and in there, a lot of people say there's 7 holidays based on the moon in there. No, well, there are, but there's actually 8. The weekly Sabbath, and it's the first one that's listed. But anyways,
That's true. That's true.
so anyways,
That's actually really good. Thanks for bringing that to my attention.
yeah. Well, thank the author of the book. I want to read more. It's just I want to do a lot of things. I started working on my tempo post again today. Not as much as I wanted to, but I went back to work on it. Anyways, okay, back to you.
No, I mean, that's it's largely what I finished. So the next step as I go forward is to turn it back to is to go back and establish the new moon in the cycle of the week. Now that we've talked a little bit about the year and the beginning of the month. I'm just thinking about what might be easier is just to start with those first 8 days as the beginning of the month.
Well, what's your
New moon
main
day.
goal in the presentation?
Main goal in the presentation is to get people to forsake using, one of the things is to get them to forsake using the Gregorian calendar, because they'll never find the Sabbath that way, and to get them into the LuniSolar calendar.
Okay,
So that they
so
can actually
I think
worship God, so they can actually worship God in truth upon His holy days.
so. I would speculate showing some history would do that better, and then bringing and showing what it actually is in Genesis instead of how they read it, because most people are going to look past the new moon day in there. They're just going to tell you you're reading into it. Really. Okay. Until you lay a foundation. So I think if you want to do that, personally, I would do that after you lay down foundation that the calendar's changed. And
okay.
And if you want presentations, I have some pictures. Let's show that.
I actually ripped some of them onto my computer that I'm going to put into that element.
Good. I want them all around the whole world. I want everybody
that I'm going to put into that element.
But
where we're talking about the calendar changing.
I mean, this one's my favorite one right there.
Yeah, I got that one.
Because, well, first of all, if you think it's Saturday, it destroys that. If you think it's Sunday, it destroys it. Of course, to be honest, I don't know how you could look on a calendar and wall and know that the Sabbath day is on the 7th day and then do it on the first day on that calendar on the wall. I don't understand that.
It's all the wonderful indoctrination from His Holiness. This whole 8th day Sabbath. The Sabbath was changed to the 8th day.
Anyways, well, Sunday used to be the 2nd day. And what is it, Acts 20 or so, where people claim it's changed to the first day of the week? It's not even saying that. That's a bad translation. That in Acts 20, I think it is. We can go look, but I'm pretty sure that's when it is. It's saying that they met on the first Sabbath, meaning the first Sabbath of the counts of the Feast of Weeks. Because first you count Sabbaths and then you count 50 days. And it was the first Sabbath of those counts.
So first you count Sabbaths and then you count 50 days?
Yeah. There's 2 counts.
How many Sabbaths?
7 Sabbaths.
And another 50 days?
And then 50 days. We can look at that if you want, but
starting from when? The first of
after
the year.
Feast of Weeks. I mean, sorry, unleavened bread.
Feast of unleavened bread. Okay, now that makes sense.
Because if you only do 1 count, you then have Pentecost in the last part of the 3rd moon instead of the end of the 4th moon. So you're celebrating Pentecost before Moses went on the mount.
Right.
And
So
so it
that,
can't be
okay,
that day.
right,
Unless God gave it to him on a different day, and then why has he got the appointed times? Anyways, sorry.
right.
But it's two counts. The count of 7 complete Sabbaths is actually more how you're supposed to say it, but 7 Sabbaths, fine. The reason why it's got complete Sabbaths is because you got the transition of new moon day in there. And that's why you got the 7 complete Sabbaths, because you go from Sabbath to Sabbath.
Mhm.
And the complete
That's too
Sabbath
bad.
is where
There's actually nowhere in the Bible that it says that that there is a 7-day week uninterrupted from the
no,
beginning of
there's
time.
not. There's so 6 days you work, 7th day you rest. Okay, great. I have that. It never states that, okay, right after that day you go work every single time, because you don't. And I can show in scriptures from the Tanakh that's not actually the case. And I can show it from the New Testament too. Acts 20.
Yeah,
Acts 20 is another example of new moon day. Without it, you won't get the count right.
yeah.
So there's another way. I don't know if not too many people know that one, but that won't work on the Gregorian 7 continuous day cycle. Acts 20 in Paul's travels.
Right.
But anyways, so another calendar I think is big. Well, let's get the other picture of that same calendar, because I have 2 of those that goes along
Mhm.
with that calendar. But this one
Yes.
shows Saturday.
Mhm.
And this is
Saturday.
both of these are archaeology. The other one came from a bathhouse
Yeah.
from Rome, and this one I forget where this one came from, but it came from Rome.
This is it's from a, I can't remember exactly, but it's some kind of barbarian tribe, actually.
That could be because the Romans copied a pagan countless 7-day calendar
Mhm.
initially, because initially leads into this other picture. Rome had an
Where
8-day.
you have like 8-day calendars and 500-day years, and
So there's
Mhm.
Rome's 8-day calendar during Christ's mortal ministry. 8 days. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. That's 8 days.
Mhm.
That's how it was in Yeshua's mortal ministry for Rome. 8 days.
And the Jews did not go with that, according to the Jews did not follow that calendar, according to
No, otherwise Yeshua would have corrected it, right?
yeah.
Um, but the Jews weren't forced into the Roman pagan Gregorian Catholic calendar until Hillel II, but that's
Until
I don't know how much.
320, until around 320.
Yeah. And that's about the same time that Constantine made Sunday the first day, because it used to be the second.
Well, because Constantine thought himself the sun god.
Well, yeah, he worshipped the sun god, and then he thought he was the sun god too. He he didn't convert to Christianity like people
No, he
claim.
converted the Christians to pagans.
Yeah, that's what happened. Um, anyways, um, but I don't know if you can see it here, but Rome also at that time only had 10 months, and they had 2 uncounted months, and it was a political battle that the Pontius Maximus, I wonder where the Catholic Church got that term from, would decide when the 2 uncounted months ended, just like the Jews had 2 uncounted days in their months.
Mhm.
The Jews had, I mean, the Romans had 2 months that were uncounted.
Oh yeah, made room for all kinds of political chicanery.
Yeah. And I think they stopped that a little bit before Christ was born, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Julius Caesar put a stop to that.
Okay. I think, was he the one that also divorced it from the moon too?
Yes, he's the one who turned it into a solely solar calendar.
Yeah, because I don't know how this worked, but when they had the 8-day week, it was still somehow connected to the moon, I believe, but I don't know how. So, because you can't get 8 into 30 or 29, and
Yeah.
so I don't really understand that one. But here's a little tidbit for you. So the Mayans have their calendar's weird, right? But they get it from the Asians, but they had 28 days. You know what's interesting? The Jews have 28 counted days, because the new moon day was a non-counted and transition day. But with all this calendar changes that happened, these Asians still kept the 28 count days of the month, which is a kind of a big base for the Mayans, right? I mean, they're
Yeah.
completely divorced from the moon now. So the Book of Mormon couldn't have happened there, because even if you don't believe in the Lunar Sabbath calendar, you gotta, the high holidays, no one argues against those being connected to the moon. It's just the weekly Sabbath people argue against, right? Which
Yeah.
doesn't make any
and-
sense, because that means God's using different calendars for different events. Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. But anyways.
No, it really doesn't. And also, the people, Seventh-day Adventists love citing Isaiah 66:22, stating that the Sabbath will be worshipped. But they forget about 23, which says, and new moon to new moon, and Sabbath
Sabbath.
to Sabbath.
I don't think they forget. I think they just don't know what to do with it, because I've had people argue with me. Well, that's for later. That was for back then and the future, not now. I'm like, so you believe in a changing God that is going from the left to the right then?
Yeah.
They don't want to answer that. They then come up with another accusation against me, which I
Well,
don't
yeah,
think is
how
true.
you're trying to cause them to lose their faith and what have you.
No, I'm not. I'm trying to get them to lose their faith in man and strengthen their faith in God and his
Stop.
scriptures.
Yeah, stop putting your confidence in Constantine.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, the people who go from Sunday to Saturday, they don't understand there's a double deception going on.
Yeah, first there's the deception of Constantine making Sunday the holy day. And then there's the reactive deception of Hillel.
Uh-huh.
It's like, okay, we can't do it by the moon anymore, so Sabbath is Saturday.
Yeah, so I mean, depending how much you want to bring up, Hillel II and their postponement days shows that there's a need for the lunar Sabbath.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
first of all, postponement days are not in Torah. It's contrary to Torah, because you're supposed to go by the sightings, not sighting them and wait some.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess in a sense, I say you see the sighting and wait for sunrise, so you wait a little bit, but postponement days is where you wait a whole nother day.
Or maybe even two.
Right. But these postponement days prove the lunar Sabbath. You want me to tell you how?
Yeah.
Because these rabbis, they know the 10th of the first moon cannot be on a Sabbath. That's why those postponement days are there.
That's the reason for one of the postponement days.
Right. Well, that's the one I like to focus on.
Because it's the easiest one to pick apart.
Yeah. But on the lunar Sabbath, right here, let me get one of my calendar I made, or pictures.
The 10th of the first month is never going to be a Sabbath.
No, never. It's always the second day of the moon or week. So,
Mhm.
oh, it's always the 10th day of the moon. And
It's always the second day past the first quarter of the moon.
Yeah, I said that wrong. But so that's why Torah never states what to do if it ever lands on the Sabbath, because it never does on the right calendar.
Right.
But like you said, one of the reasons for postponement days is to make it so that's never will be a Sabbath, because that's the day that you buy your lamb if you don't raise your own. And you
Right.
have to do it that day.
So that because you have to have it 4 days leading up to Passover.
Well, first of all, Torah states do it on
10/9/8. Yeah.
Also, that's the day that Christ went into Jerusalem, was the 10th. That's when he went, just like prophecy states. But then also that's the day the lamb was selected.
True enough.
Because I mean, anyways, I've said this before, but he came in the 4th day of the creation prophecy, and then 3, 2, 1. This lamb was selected before the foundation of the world, which new moon day represents before the foundation of the world. But anyways, but back to the main thing, the 10th day of the first moon proves lunar Sabbath, because it can never be on a Sabbath.
That's true.
And on a continuous 7-day cycle,
is absolutely mathematically impossible.
Yeah, it just won't happen with the lunar Sabbath. But on a continuous 7-day cycle, yeah, it happens. It will happen quite regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And
So are transition days Sabbaths?
They're a new moon day.
Okay.
Some people just call them new moon. Some people call it transition. I like the word transition, because you're transitioning into the next moon. But in scriptures, they're celebrated as new moon days, and there is an example of a 2-day new moon day. And so one's going to be the transition day from the old month, and then the second day is going to be the new moon day. Huh?
Where is that in the scriptures where it has a 2-day new moon day?
I'll show you.
Because I want to put that in there.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Philo's a gem, by the way.
Oh, especially for lunar Sabbath stuff.
Yeah.
And he was alive during Yeshua's day, and he was selected by the other Jews to represent them. So if you look hard enough, you'll find the stuff in the scriptures, but Philo just makes it easier.
Yeah. And he said, where? I don't know. This is.
Oh, no, that's not the one I'm thinking of. So I think is it this one? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So First Samuel 20, 24 through 30 is an example of a 2-day new moon celebration. So whether if you use the word transition or just new moon, I don't think it matters, but I think it's a little confusing to only use one, because a new moon at the beginning and at the end before there's the new moon, I find it more confusing to have one than just two. But you'll also find some people in this arena where they'll say it's all one day, where they'll put 2 days into one. Reading First Samuel 20, I think disproves that, but it's not a big deal to me. right? It's not something I'm gonna die
But
on.
that's something that I can throw in there to push the 2-day new moon.
Yeah, First
Transition
Samuel
day.
20.
Yeah, transition day, new moon day.
Yeah. So there's an example of it. I wish I had another example, right? But I just know the one.
So the 29th was a Sabbath.
Yeah.
And then they have so this is a 3-day rest going on here. Here you are.
Yeah,
Yes, Steve.
yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
I
You ever use any of those days just to sleep?
no, I study.
Yeah.
No, I'd rather study. Just
Yeah.
but anyways.
No, I'm just being silly.
Anyways, but yeah, I wish I had another example of a 2-day new moon celebration, but that's the only one I have. But let me check.
It may be enough if you can actually.
No, it's just First Samuel 20 is the only one I have.
Mhm.
So, but I have more examples that teach the 3 types of days, right? So I'm not personally too worried about it.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, the 3 types of days: working day, Sabbath, new moon day.
yeah, it's just new moon day sometimes has 1 day and sometimes 2.
Mhm.
I just
But you're not actually in the totality. You're not actually into the totality of the new moon on transition day.
no, because you're still in the old moon. You're waiting for the new moon to
If
happen.
you worked really hard at it, you might see a small sliver.
I doubt it, because it takes what I think it was 15.5 hours for the eye to first visibly be able to see it, but then it has to be above you also. So
True.
I mean, there is a possibility, okay? Because if the conjunction happened really early, transition day, you could see the sliver, but I
Right.
I don't
Odds
go
are
by
off.
first sliver. I go by conjunction. So
No, I'm talking about
citing it.
I'm just looking at you have new moon day, right? That's set. You got new moon day. On a transition day, when you're looking up at the sky, I'm just talking about when you're
Oh,
looking up at the
sure.
sky
You could
on
see
a
it.
transition day, you could potentially see something.
Yeah, you potentially could. But this gets into an issue of citing. Citing adds a lot more complications to the month. Into the fact that the Orthodox say, well, if after the 30th day, then just pretend you saw it. That's nowhere in Torah. And if anything, that's them recognizing that 30 is what it used to be historically, and you can see that with Noah.
Mhm. Right.
But that's just another one of these silly rules that they come up with that's not in Torah, and these first sliver people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not actually looking for a rule. It was just a bit of idle speculation. Technically, on transition day, you might be able to see something.
Yeah, you might. It
is absolutely unimportant.
Yes, it is unimportant. Because just the way the moon and the earth could be, you may not see the first sliver, even though could it's there, right?
Right.
Just because of the angle between where you're at on the earth and the moon at the
Mhm.
time.
Right.
Unless you can see through the earth. I mean, it's going to be glass one day.
Oh, yeah. Heck
Maybe
yeah.
that's why it's going to be glass, so we can see that sign. No,
I'm rubbing off on you.
oh, that's not why. Because if we really needed to see that sign, we'd have to. It would be glass now, right? But anyway,
Exactly. We don't need to see it.
no,
I did. It was just a bit of, it was an idle thought that crossed my mind and I
no,
spoke
that's
it.
fine.
Should not have.
Oh, okay. So, another thing about calendar changes, we can go look at some more on that, but there.
Yeah.
So France, they had a 10-day calendar, but the problem was, the people and animals were dying.
10-day week didn't work out well for them.
No, I don't remember how long they had it.
Was this in the ancient calendars?
Yeah, this is the calendar changes. I have most of my calendar changes stuff here, except
Oh yeah, I've been living there.
yeah, I don't have it all here. I got the more relevant stuff here. It's just, it's hard to put everything in here. 'Cause some of it is, I don't know where to put it. In fact, here, you'll love this, a Karaite Jew. So Karaite Jews are some of the better Jews, I would say. I think they're more honest, and although they still stick to some false traditions, I think they try harder not to. But anyways, through all the trials and tribulations that humanity has experienced over the 5,000 years, we have no proof whatsoever that our current Saturday is the actual 7th-day anniversary, which I have tons of proof that it's not. But at least he's honest
Mhm,
that they have nothing that it says it is.
mhm.
So you got to give him credit for that, right?
Yeah.
But okay, but let's go back to France. Or let's see. What?
Calendars around the world. General.
Oh, do I not have France in here? I mean, that may be something I need to add.
Is that in your calendars around the world thing?
It might be.
Go down.
I wouldn't be too surprised. Oh, that one's a YouTube.
Okay. A strange history of the calendar.
Oh, that one's YouTube. That's just Julian.
That's Wikipedia.
Yeah. Well, here. French Revolution calendar. So, I mean, here's somebody talking about it. I'm not making this stuff up even, so I may have to go add this one to my resource page now.
Of course, it would be a revolutionary.
Well, maybe that's why they did it, because 3 times 10 is the 30. So maybe that's why they did it.
That and to
But-
keep more work days.
Yeah, which killed people and animals because it overworked them.
Yep.
Oh.
But that's why you would do it.
Oh yeah, you want to give, if you're making money off of these poor, right? You'd want to
Yep.
do that. Oh, look, 10 days in a week, 3 weeks in a month, 10 hours in a day, 100 minutes in an hour, 100 seconds in a minute. So they really changed a lot of things. I didn't know that part.
This is called idiocy.
Well, okay, so not necessarily. I mean, today we're in a system of deck 10, so they were just going with that.
Mhm.
The 60 comes from Babylon. I mean, we don't know how many minutes were in an hour in
Right.
Christ's day. It's probably 60, but they don't really focus on that. And in fact, the
100 minutes in an hour. That actually makes 10 hours much longer than 10 hours. Makes it more like 18, I think.
I'm trying to remember how it was talked about the sundial move.
But I don't.
I will again.
So what do they do at night?
So most societies didn't really count night very accurately. Oh, it's 10 degrees. So whatever 10 degrees was, and I've run across some people think these 10 degrees fully matches how on average you get a 13th month every 3 years, but it's not every 3 years like people like to claim. And I know that because I've done hundreds of years in code, not by hand. Anyways. So some people try to use that and do that calculation. It doesn't always work. So that's what I was trying to find. 10 degrees. But anyways. So yeah, France had a 10-week. So I guess I'll have to add this. I guess I thought I had something there and I didn't. I forgot that I didn't put something in there. It's hard to get everything in there.
Yeah.
Anyways. I'll look. Oh no,
If it's
iteration.
if it's crazy, trust the French to have done it.
The French created a 10-day week. Here's another one on it.
Yeah.
But it was a disaster. It was during the French Revolution.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I said.
This other one said too.
That's why I was saying it would have to be a revolution. Who came up with an idea like this?
Yeah, these. I don't actually think the French Revolution was good from some studies since, but anyways.
Well, technically, there are those who would argue that the American Revolution wasn't really.
I don't think it was. I think it was a good part done by the Jesuits, but that's another subject. And so let's try
exactly. All of these revolutions are sown by the Jesuits.
Yes. So, I mean, here's a calendar change, the Julian to the Gregorian. I mean, that one's not most people are going to really just look past that. But the thing is that you could try to bring in, if it was actual God's calendar, why did they have to fix it? Was God's ways not perfect? Because the big change between the Julian and the Gregorian was realigning to spring equinox, right?
Right.
And so they.
So why did they have to realign? Why did they have to realign?
Right. If it was God's calendar, they had to fix it, and wouldn't that imply that God's calendar was broken?
Yep.
Because even how we have it now, I don't know if you know. Do you know what leap seconds are?
Yeah, it's like every few years they have to add like seconds back in or something like that. For every year.
No, it's not every few years. It can be every whenever they think it needs to be.
Right.
No, I that sounds corny, but that's actually what it is, because they
Mhm.
can't predict it beforehand. So they'll
Oh,
just do
yeah,
it
and that's
whenever.
why sometimes you'll see a second, and that's why sometimes you'll see a second take longer than you thought a second should take.
No, because most clocks don't do leap seconds.
No, I'm just, that's just silly.
Yeah, and the clocks that do, you'll see a 60 on the seconds, and then it'll turn over with the 61st. But
Uh-huh.
hardly anything ever does it. But even with that, the calendar still gets off, even with leap seconds.
Yep.
And so is that implying that God's calendar is wrong? Or is that evidence that it's not God's calendar?
Mm-hmm.
Because the lunar solar going off the 2 signs for the year makes it so it never gets off that far.
Right.
And it's
Well,
always,
it's
I wouldn't exactly put it this way, but it's always kind of auto-correcting, so to speak. I mean, that might not be the best term for it, but you kind of get the idea.
well, because the LuniSolar is going to it's lunar, it's based on the lunar cycle, but the days begin when the sun comes up. That's
Sure,
why it's
but
called LuniSolar.
this part that I'm dealing with is when does the year start? And the year starts after the spring equinox.
Yeah.
And that is
It's the first
something
new
that,
moon after, it's the first new moon after the spring equinox.
correct, yeah. And sunrise. But
Yeah.
and that spring equinox is something that's done according to the sun, which is one of the 2 great lights that we're supposed to use.
That's true. It sets everything in place.
And you can do it
So
by
the
shadows.
question,
In
so the
fact, from my
question that I
research,
have,
the priests would do it at noon, and they could see how the shadow acted at noon to know when the spring equinox was.
here's an interesting, here's the thing that I think about sometimes, though,
What?
is how since the spring equinox is pretty well fixed.
On the Gregorian, yeah. It's the
Well,
Gregorian calendar is designed for that, though.
mhm. But since the spring equinox is pretty well fixed, and you're not dealing with 30 and 31 day months with a 28 dayer in there, you're dealing with all 29 to 30 day months. How does it even out?
Oh, the lunar
How does it even
calendar,
out at the end? How does it even out at the end?
it's shorter. The lunar calendar is shorter than the solar. So that's why about every 3rd year you add another moon in, which makes it longer to compensate for
Yeah,
that.
but what do you do? But like, say this isn't your 3rd year, and you reach your last set of your last full. Well, I guess
So
I guess
I-
that wouldn't really be an issue then, I guess,
I
because it's the first new moon after the
yeah, it's always the first new moon after the spring equinox. So
Yeah.
I'm not quite catching your problem.
yeah, no, I'm just, it's stuff that it's just stuff that I'm thinking about and trying to work through.
So
I know.
an interesting little tidbit for you: the months that have 31 days were because of rulers who wanted that extra day because they were more important.
Okay.
So that's definitely not of God.
No.
Sorry, I got a little cough.
Yeah, so no,
And there were fights over which months had the extra 31 days.
that's interesting.
So
That's very interesting.
if this is God's calendar, why are we changing it?
Right. But Mike, but it's like, yeah, I mean, I think what it is I'm still struggling with the idea of not having, with the idea of not having a set day on a set calendar that is the changeover day. You know what I'm saying? I think that's really what it is.
Oh, this calendar stuff changed some here and some there. It didn't happen all at once.
No, I'm talking about what's causing my questions with the lunisolar calendar is not necessarily its legitimacy, but it's my mindset. I'm still coming from that. I'm still trying to come out of that Gregorian mindset where you have a set calendar, set beginning of the year, set. You know what I'm saying?
No.
January 1st every year is the beginning of the year in the Gregorian calendar.
Sure.
That doesn't change.
January Janus is a two-headed god looking in the past and the future.
Yes, I know.
Oh.
But my point remains, that's something that you can count on. That will happen on the same day every year. It's set.
Okay, so it's the same day on the lunar solar too.
Well,
it's just that
it's a different day on the calendar, so it makes, because I'm still coming out
on
of
whose
that
calendar. It's a
mindset.
different day on the Gregorian calendar, but it's the same day on the lunar solar calendar.
But I'm talking about, okay. Try to understand where I'm still coming from.
Right, I am trying to. I'm sorry.
No, I'm trying to, what I'm trying to do is, when you come over to a new idea, sometimes ideas from the old mindset are still there.
Yeah.
That you have to shoot down, and that's basically what I'm saying. Is it's just, it's something from the old mindset that's creating problems in my head about the beginning of the year.
Okay. Well, maybe we can help get past that some, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you're holding on to.
No, it's just this idea that there is a set day.
Yeah, there's a set day on the Gregorian one, and there's a set day on the lunar solar one. So they both have a set day. It's just how you derive that set day is different for the two of them.
Right. It's not just, it requires a little more work in the LuniSolar. Until you figured it out.
Maybe, because on the Gregorian, you have to count. Someone has to keep count. Now, I mean, with today's technology,
that's someone you don't even know who that is anymore.
Right. I mean, it could be your computer, right? Because it's counting. But anyways, but if someone lost the count, how do you find it on the Gregorian?
You've got a point.
You can't find it until you get the equinox, and then you could go pretty much count it after that. But you can't. There's nothing. There's nothing directly will give you the start of the year on the Gregorian other than spring equinox, and you count from it. But you can't get that's after the fact. Right. Because the equinox is pretty much always the same day. Okay. Right. And that's by design. But on the lunar solar, there's always a way to find it if you're watching.
Yeah, you use your sundial.
Right. Yeah. Your sundial, which is part of the lights, the sun. So you can just find it. The Gregorian one, you can't. You have to count. And if somebody loses, if everybody lost count, you have to wait a whole year almost to know when it is. Right? Because you have to go off of the equinox. and then count from it.
And then it's
That's
still going.
harder
Yeah, it
than
is.
doing the lunar solar when you actually think about it. It's just,
Yeah, but when you're used to doing it one way, the other way seems harder.
right. Well, the thing is, everybody's got wall calendars, right? So someone's always
So
counting it.
there's always a constant reminder of this thing that's there. It's not necessarily true, but it's there.
Oh, sure. But the thing that I was bringing out is,
Mo-
if we both got lost on an island and we didn't have a wall calendar with us, how are we going to find it?
I mean, technically you'd have to use the sundial and figure out how.
Yeah, but you would have to find the equinox and then count forward to it,
Yep.
because it won't tell you when it is. It'll tell you when to
Right.
count from, and then you have to count like 9 months to go get
Yeah.
your start of the year. Where in the
Yeah.
lunar solar, it's right there.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. And
And
it's
so,
just the new moon after.
yeah.
And
So
just keep it, so it's just basically Sabbath to Sabbath, new moon to new moon, and just stop thinking about it.
yeah. And on top of that, if you don't know, of course you can get this for both to some degree, right? But if you don't know what moon you're in, you can look at the season and have a pretty good idea.
Right.
That's true for both calendars, but to absolutely know when the new year is, it's actually harder in the Gregorian if we're on an island that we have to do it ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. That actually does make a lot more sense.
It's just, you don't think about it because everybody's got something on their wall or their computer or their phone, right?
Right.
And so it's all those other devices doing it.
But that actually shows how hard it is to keep track of it because everybody's got to have something.
Yeah, good point. My big point is this: if we got stuck in an island and we don't have those calendars, it's harder to figure out.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, at least by looking at the sun and the moon, you could, at the very least, you could know when you were at Sabbaths.
Yeah, you have your weekly Sabbaths, if nothing else. But on the
Because
Gregorian,
you could tell it by the observation of the moon.
right?
First quarter, first half, full moon. Second quarter, then third quarter, then new moon.
Yeah. How can you do that on the Gregorian?
Yeah, you can't really.
No, you can't, because there is no way in hell I'm gonna have that to determine your continuous 7-day cycle with the moon. There's none. There's no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, because the new moon hangs around for sometimes hangs around for 2 days, sometimes only one.
Yeah. Well, full moon hangs around some too. In fact, this is one of the reasons I think further proof that full moon is not the new moon is because you can't tell by the visible eye when it is, because you go watch. There's 3 days it looks like it's full moon. And it
Right.
goes along with the crescent. First visible crescent takes 15.5 hours to see. It's the same idea. Our eyes can't detect it. You can't detect it when it's gone, and you can't detect it when it arrives. It's so far out there, we just can't detect those changes.
Right. No, that
So,
actually, yeah, thanks for being patient with me. I'm just
no, that's fine. I want to help people think through it faster.
yeah.
So So that way you can help me with other things, which you have already. So,
Well, I just like, maybe at some point I often feel like the Scarecrow, Wizard of Oz.
the one without the
While
brain.
away the hours, conferring with the flowers, salting with the rain. And in my head, I'd be scratching while my thoughts were busy hatching if I only had a brain.
Oh, so that show is a cult.
I know it is.
So, but
I know it is. I was the person, I would always walk people through it and say, show them stuff.
that's one that if I ever do a video on, I mean, I could, but anyways, but her glittering red shoes. Anyways,
Right.
okay, well, back to the calendar.
Tell me there's no symbolism in that.
Oh no. And the glittering red, no, that's just because it's in Revelations. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. Hollywood knows its symbolism.
Yes, the top people do for sure. The actors, I think, are, depending on which actors, could be debatable. I think the more famous ones probably do, or at least a pretty good amount of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
Well,
it's fair.
mostly the ones who have to know it are the filmmakers,
Yes.
people who actually make the films.
Yeah, they surely do know, and they do a pretty good job at twisting things.
Mhm.
Here, I'll just give you a little one from Mary Poppins I watched the other day just because someone was asking me.
The new
So
one.
in the beginning,
Are you talking about the new one or the
old one,
old one? Okay.
but the guy that represents Satan, the guy that's always kind of hanging around all the time, he represents Satan. But anyways, he takes his brick sticks, aka chalk, and makes chalk art of worlds that he wants to have. I said brick sticks on purpose because of
Yeah.
Babylon, when they made it with bricks and whatnot. But
Yeah.
and when he tried to take the children there, the church and the state, or the followers and the state, into his new world that he created, he couldn't. He needed the church that venerates Mary to take them, Mary Poppins.
Mm-hmm.
And the Poppins, actually, I've looked it up after watching it, has to do with the witches, the Poppins.
Yep. Yep.
But anyways, it was because of the church that then all four of them can then go into this imaginary world. So Satan's church is what is able to bring people there, because it's his church that are convincing people to do the sinning. But anyways,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a really that's a nice strong connection there.
and then it ended because of a deluge of water. The flood came and washed away.
Mhm.
And then there's another one of fire and brimstone at the end. But anyways, I'll just give you the one because we're focusing on calendar changes. But I saw a lot in that show in one sitting. There's a few things I didn't know what it was, but in one sitting, there's so much in there.
Oh, Walt Disney was an occult master.
Yes, he was. Okay, so we talked a little about Hillel second.
I've been looking. I've looked a little bit into that. I think it might be useful just from the perspective of it's something that's useful to include just from the perspective of shooting down the Saturday Sabbath.
Sure. I think probably the biggest one for that is going to be this picture.
Yeah.
And this one, but I like the other one more.
Yeah.
But
I like.
and then I have that in Roman history in here somewhere. I just search for Rome. There, it's going to be in these guys here. But Hillel's gonna show that that the Jews used to keep something different, and then they were forced into doing the 7 continuous day cycle, which
Mhm.
then leads into Lunar Sabbath stuff, if you want.
Yes.
But 8-day. Oh, go talk about the February. I think it's in here, but February is a complicated day or month for the Romans because of the religious beliefs that dealt with February. Oh, there's the French Revolution.
Yeah.
Why do I have that under Rome? And why? Oh, I searched.
Well, they're a kind of romance country.
Yeah. Oh, that's Wikipedia. That probably brings out 10 days. Let's check. Oh, they bring out decimal time, calendar
10
design.
days of the week. 10 days of the week.
Yeah. So that has it. Maybe I need to put it in a better section. So I'll have to add more. But anyways, I did have something. So I wasn't too crazy. I just couldn't find it.
Yeah.
7-day week started with Saturday, and then here's a couple things that show
But
that.
the thing is, the thing that I'm trying to actually show is that Constantine could not have done what he did without the acquiescence of the Roman bishops.
Yeah, he
They were already compromised.
yes, most of Christianity at that time was compromised, even the ones who tried harder to
The guys in Asia Minor were still trying to use the lunisolar calendar and worship at Passover and the holy days, but they had other areas where they were compromised.
Right. But yes, the reason why Constantine was able to push this so well is because the believers were weak in their faith. And so they just kind of went along with it like
Well,
people do today.
they figured it was better to go with this than to go feed the lions.
Yeah. Well,
And that's really that's really what it came down to for both the Jews and the Christians was okay, I'm tired of being lion food.
sure, but we see in Daniel, Meshach, Mebach, and I always.
Yeah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yeah, I mean they didn't get fed to the lions because Daniel did that, but
They got thrown into a furnace.
They got thrown into a furnace. But both of these have symbolism that point to the second coming because it's coming again. In fact, on the books, there's the Sunday blue laws. On the books, they're just not enforced.
Right.
Which those who are listening that don't know that it means you can't work on Sunday, and it's enforced by the government, which is wrong. But I mean, they're there.
They're waiting for a time.
Yeah.
And the Catholic Church is still the driver.
Yeah.
Still the driver of the bus.
Yeah. Anyways, the continuous weekly cycle. I forget what's in there, but that it wasn't that way, because the 8 days, and then they actually got the 7 week from pagans that they conquered, and then they decided it was better, and they kept the pagan names. In fact, in the scriptures, you'll never find a name for the day of the week. It's always 1 through 6 and maybe 7, but generally Sabbath.
There's only the only day that's named is Sabbath or New Moon Day.
Right. But that's not a day of a week. That's a completely different category. But you never see Sunday or Saturday, Friday, because that came from the pagans. And we're not supposed to be believers naming things after pagan gods.
You
and
mean we're
that's
not
what
supposed to, we're not supposed to, we're not supposed to worship after the manner of the Amorites in whose land we dwell?
No.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm glad I keep quoting that scripture for a good reason.
I mean, even just the way time was kept has changed. Because for a long time, even in the United States, they used sundials for time. And
Yeah.
what changed that in the United States was the trains. It was the connecting the country together with trains is what made a need to be a better way of keeping track of time that was more universal than sundials.
Right.
I don't
Because
remember.
the sundial is going to be in a different place and a different, as you go across, it's going to be a different place in a different area.
Right. And this is why I actually in cities they had churches that had the church bells that everybody could hear. Get everybody synced up with each other. Because they needed that. Because they didn't, not everybody had a pocket watch, because that didn't come until later.
Yeah.
But anyways, so even just how the
So
hours
you're
were-
thinking that going with the history approach first, give them the shot. Give them the shot.
I
a little
would,
bit.
because if you go, here's it in scriptures, and now this is what it means, they're gonna go like, whatever, because they're still gonna have Gregorian on their brain.
Right.
And if they have Gregorian on their brain solidly at this point, when you're trying to show something to show them something different, it's not going to get through their ears into the brain to think about it.
Right.
Or if it does, they'll be thinking about it in the Gregorian aspect.
Right.
So, in my opinion, you need to destroy that first, or at least
So-
attempt to, or get them to see that there's problems with it.
So basically bring on the shock troops first, then
I would, if I was doing it, I would bring up history first.
I actually like that. I actually kind of like that idea.
Even I've seen people starting to come to the Lunar Sabbath where they still struggle a little bit because they still have Gregorian on their mind.
Yeah, there's and they don't like the idea that the Sabbath seems to slide all over the calendar.
Well, it depends on how much you believe in Lunar Sabbath. To me, it's the Gregorian one that's sliding. But anyways, I see God's calendar.
But what I'm saying is, to somebody who is of a Gregorian mindset, who is coming over something, they're going to see the Sabbath day as sliding all over the week.
Correct. And in my experience, people thinking Gregorian calendar is God calendar is what makes them hold back from the Lunar Sabbath.
Right. So yeah, definitely bring in the shock troops and go in there.
And then if your goal is then to get people to start believing the Lunar Sabbath,
my goal is to get people to repent and worship God in spirit and truth.
Sure. Okay. So the next thing then to possibly bring up before Lunar Sabbath, bring up the 3 types of days. Because that's not directly teaching Lunar Sabbath. It leads to it, and the only reason it can work is the Lunar Sabbath, but you're tippy-toeing or you're slipping your little fingers into it, right?
Yeah. So first you just blast away the wall, and then you just start building up certain.
And then start talking about God's calendar. Like you can start.
And then what I've started to do actually makes more sense.
Yeah, because then they'll be more open to seeing the first part of Genesis being a new moon day. But you may want to bring out first from scriptures how there's 3 types of days, and one of those types is actually new moon day, and then show that in Genesis.
Yeah.
Because after you start believing something is when you'll actually start seeing it. Because if you start just trying to show it to them without giving them the initial idea, they'll be more hesitant to believe it, if that makes sense.
So, yeah, especially with something that is so against what we've been ingrained to believe in.
Yeah,
You gotta come in with the cannons up.
Yeah, you got to destroy the Gregorian calendar. If your goal is to get them to believe, destroy the Gregorian calendar. Because until they see that there's problems with that,
you can't step away from Babylon when you're using their calendar.
No, in fact, the calendar you use to determine your worship will also determine who you worship. I know that's mean, but it's true. That's the difference between the seal and the mark. The seal is the true Sabbath. Because there's actually 3 types of Sabbath.
There's actually a whole, and I think there's a lot more lunar Sabbatarians than people think there are.
They're growing. We're still a minority though, but
yeah. Well, those who take the seal of God in their forehead are always in the minority.
Yeah, and it probably will stay that way. Sadly.
But that doesn't preclude a massive upswing in righteousness.
Sure. Well, even if people don't believe, we're still supposed to go throughout the seeds. So, but to help them even possibly even consider this,
you got to blow up. You got to
blow up the Gregorian calendar, because people have been brainwashed with that. For lack of a better word. I mean, we grew up with it. I mean, that our parents taught it to us when we were children, right? So does school. And that pretty much the definition of brainwashing.
You make your appointments on it. Everything's done on it.
Yeah. I looked up my birthday recently on the Lunar Solar, just out of curiosity. And when I was born, it was a week after Hanukkah ended.
Oh, wow.
I find that interesting, but anyways.
June 22nd. I wonder when that is. 1978.
You want me to see?
Yeah, let's take a look.
Here, I'll pause it so that way you can tell me the year. So, an important thing with calendar changes is, oh, did I do the wrong one? Yeah, I think I did the wrong one.
That was an interesting screen though.
Oh, we can go look at those pictures. Those are pictures I used for calendar change stuff.
Okay.
So we can go back to that in a minute. But there's the international dateline. That has had lots of changes, even recently.
Right.
Because this is funny. Countries will change what side of the dateline they're on for convenience of money, which in effect, if you think it's a continuous 7-day cycle, this has broken up SDA churches, literally. Because do you go with what's on the wall or do you go with the count?
Right.
It's broken it up multiple times at these countries. Because what is it? A 7-day continuous count, or is it by what's on the wall? There is no right answer.
Right.
Because if you go by the 7 continuous count, okay, now you're on Friday. Or no, it would be that now you're on Sunday. Well, it depends on which way you change. So it could be either one. right? Because if you can
Crazy.
forward or back.
Hey, there are any recent changes to our calendar?
Oh yeah, there's been tons of changes. Some places more recent than others, but yeah.
Did they add more holidays or traditions?
No, it's more a matter of people deciding where they sit in the calendar.
On that one, yeah. And so, I mean, that's one thing to bring up. I mean, that's kind of a unique situation, but it does also show the problems, right?
Mhm.
There's this one. I forget what this one is though. Oh, this one, if I remember right, oh no, it's not what I was thinking. Oh, I was talking about how the Gregorian is partly off of the Jesuit astronomers.
Mhm.
Jesuit, definitely not of God, right?
It depends on which God you're talking about.
Very good point. Not the God Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the one I meant. Um,
Well, they
But
still
very-
get the Feast
I
of
mean-
Lights on the Gregorian calendar. Do they?
They have it in the wrong place, Johnny, probably.
Oh, they probably do.
now I forgot what I was going to say.
Because I've been catching a lot of flack from people who are interested in celebrating the holy days, but I keep announcing them as they say it, as they see it, a day early.
Oh, so yeah, there's a lot of calendar wars. It's kind of funny I got involved in that pretty early, actually. But I've been more, well, recently I've done an app for it, so I'm like really there. But yeah, like Hillel's calendar, that's all calculated. It doesn't actually go off of the phases of the moon. On top of that, their calculations are off, and their just calculations are off, and then they have the postponement days. But then there's other people that do by first sliver, and then there's some people that do full moon, which just completely messes up. And then there's some that will
But
do.
you wouldn't be happening to talk about, and you wouldn't happen to be talking about guys like Val Brinkerhoff, would you?
Yeah, he does full moon last time I heard, but there's others that do it,
Mhm.
even within the restoration. And then some people who do the dark conjunction, but they're then, instead of doing the range of 29.2 to 29.9 days, they do 29 and a half, because that's easy to calculate. And that's what World's Last Chance does. And so that's just what they do. Instead of
Mhm.
doing the variable lunar cycle like I do. It's just the reason
Right.
why most people just do the 29.5, because that's easy, where the correct way is a lot more complicated, actually. And that's why people don't do it. The math is a lot harder.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot more 30-day months than 29.
I think it's about average, but I mean the actual average is 29.52, so there's going to be barely more on the longer side, right, of the 30, but just barely.
But since I've started getting into it,
Okay.
both of the months that I've seen have been on the longer side.
Well, it's going to be pretty much even, so I wouldn't rely on that
Yeah.
too much.
Okay.
But you'll get months like multiple 30s in a row and multiple 29s in a row, because of just the way that the lunar cycle goes. Some people will say it always alternates. No, not if you're doing it correctly. But when I first started, I didn't look into the details so much. It was more later. It's just, anyways, I don't know. It's been a slow process of learning all these little nitty-gritty details. So anyways,
Mhm.
but the international dateline is an interesting thing about the calendar, because if this is God's calendar, where does God say where that international dateline is, right? Or if it doesn't matter, then what does God
Why
say
do we
about
have
what to
them?
do when it changes?
If it doesn't matter, why do we have one?
Yeah. Why? Well, the international dateline does matter because it needs, you need that to get the current system to work. But anyways,
Yeah.
Because
uh,
there's a lot of 31 months in the calendar right now.
yeah, well, these are just things that
Since
people
we're
don't think
born.
about. Of course,
Mhm.
they don't live around the international dateline. Why would they think about it, right? But I mean, if this is
Right.
really God's calendar, this stuff like this wouldn't be causing problems as it does.
Mhm.
So, anyways,
We're already starting to see some problems recently.
oh, what's that?
Talking about with the, with the resources keeping on piling up and what have you.
Now he's talking about worldly problems.
Like the increasing of money.
Oh,
You mean the decrease
inflation.
of the value of the decrease of the value of money?
The decrease of value of money and a little bit of wars kicking off.
Well, wars have been going off for a while. We're in the time of wars and rumors of wars, so that's part of
Well,
the
America's
process of
only
it.
bringing some Russian soldiers.
Oh, that's just the current rendition of it.
Yeah.
It's been going on for a long time since Rome. I mean, that started with Rome. We're still part of Rome right now, but anyways,
We're still in part of Roman culture.
yeah.
Well, yeah, because we still live on their calendar.
Well, there's that. That's a good way to bring it back. Anyways, back
Johnny,
to
can you please be quiet and listen
Oh,
as opposed to talking?
oh yeah.
Thank you.
so I do think the best approach is show the problems with the Gregorian calendar and possibly talk about the different calendars throughout the world that then the Catholic Church forced those other
Mhm.
parts of the world to keep their calendar. So that could be one way to start approaching this, and I think it would be a better approach. And then you could talk about the 3 different types of days. I have some
Mhm.
verses for that if you want.
I mean, that leads naturally into a lunar Sabbath discussion.
Yeah, because the big thing on the Gregorian calendar is there's only 2 types of days, right?
Yeah,
But the scriptures can easily show that there's 3 types of days.
that's true.
And so that means the Gregorian calendar isn't God's calendar. In fact, I don't have a resource page on 3 types of days. That's resource.
I know you've got a, I know I saw something in it.
I talk about 3 types of days. In fact, the picture on the Lunar Sabbath group, if you look at the picture for that group, it in it has a verse that talks about it, the Ezekiel one, but there's a few. We can go look at it. But I mean, even New Moon Day, like this, the First Samuel one, that's showing a 3rd type of day, right?
Mhm.
But let's go get. Oh, if you want, we can go look at all these pictures. Here, I'll make it big. View extra large. I'll go back here and we can go share this. So this will be a little sidetrack, but Oh, I forget. Oh yeah, that's with the sounding of the trumpet. That's these are just some Lunar Sabbath articles.
Okay.
Yeah, so this one's going from Gregorian, Julian to Gregorian, which we talked a little bit about. If this was really God's calendar, why'd we skip days? I mean, we
Right.
did and it didn't, but we skipped the numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I, is God's calendar not perfect?
Got a point.
Because it has been messed around a lot, especially with the Romans.
Yeah, it has. So here's a list of new moon days in the Bible.
Where is this? Where am I? I've lost track of your cursor.
Oh, well,
So did I.
oh yeah, here, sorry. I did something on my screen, it didn't show up on yours, sorry.
Oh, okay.
So here's a list.
Okay.
So are we on Chronicles?
Where does that come from?
What?
I can Google that, right?
Oh, I can give you the picture. I'll give it to you right now.
Okay.
What?
Let me do that real quick before I forget.
Hmm.
There you go. Okay. So go back to this other share. So Enoch's calendar has problems.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You probably best just to leave that one alone because Enoch has multiple calendars. People try to make into one, just to show that it's not what it is, what it claims to do. And it actually states that in one place, I can find it for you if you want, but it states that the moon only has 28 days in one case, which that's never happened.
Right.
Because then you wouldn't get your fourth Sabbath.
Right.
So anyways, the calendars in the book of Enoch contradict each other and they contradict Yahweh's calendar.
Well, I think that the Book of Enoch is largely a distraction.
Yeah, it's so a lot of people claim that because the Dead Sea people had it, that it's scripture, but the Dead Sea people called it fan fiction. So they knew it wasn't scripture, even though they had it.
Right.
And so them claiming just because the Dead Sea people had it means it's scripture is wrong because the Dead Sea people knew it wasn't scripture. They called it fan fiction. I mean, they had a different word for it. I don't remember the exact word, but that's what it meant.
That's not exactly a sterling endorsement.
No, it's not, but people don't want to talk about that part. So here's some pictures of some encyclopedias. I mean, this could, if you want to use history to bring in Lunar Sabbath, that's a good way to start doing that. In fact, this looks like a duplicate. Yeah, it is. So, I mean, it's in encyclopedias, the
Mhm.
Lunar Sabbath. It's just people don't go look. So this one just kind of brings out how Satan wants to change the calendar, but he did it after Yahweh did it, right? 700
Mhm.
BC, with the lunar cycle change. In fact, one thing to bring up with that is how it fits with the creation prophecy of when it happened.
Mhm.
Because it's when it was supposed to. And also the fourth day, the sun was not created on the first day, nor was the moon. They were appointed. When you go look at the Hebrew, they weren't created, they were appointed. It's different than what the English translation is. That's just verses about the day starting. I mean, the sunrise starting the day. This is just a little funny cartoon, right?
I like that one.
Shoot, clothing. This one looks like a quote from someone from history. I can see. Encyclopedia. So you might like this one, so we can go. So an encyclopedia talking about the Bible. In the years following Clement of Alexandria time, almost changed the start to take place that was, they changed the start, was to radically change the Christian concept of the Sabbath. Holy mackerel, right there.
The intimate connection between the week and the month was soon discerned.
Wait, what?
It is certain that the week soon followed a development of its own, and it became the custom, without paying any regard to the days of the month, the lunisolar month, so that the new moon no longer coincided with the first day of the month. The introduction of the custom of celebrating the Sabbath every seventh day, irrespective of the relationship of the day to the moon's phases, led to a complete separation from the ancient view of the Sabbath.
So Constantine made modern.
That's just Clement of Alexandria who started it.
Clement of Alexandria, who started the whole entire plan of changing the calendar and
Wow.
messing around with dates.
It started long. I don't remember when he was born, but it started around 700 BC. It's just, I think some of the changes initially were just because they didn't know how to fix the problem that happened out of the unsyncing what they were used to happened, because it went from 360 days to 365. In fact, in Egypt, they had 5 non-count days because they didn't know what to do with it for a while. They were just non-count, just do what you want. Holidays, they don't count for anything. Literally, Egypt had 5 consecutive non-count days.
That's crazy. So you could probably, so that was probably the best time to attack Egypt.
Sure.
Burn it to the ground.
Johnny, that's enough.
Sure.
Sorry, I just added my word to it.
Anyways,
Johnny,
oh, look, here's a nice picture for Psalms 104. He made the moon
yeah.
for appointments, and the weekly Sabbath is an appointment, right?
Yes,
Um,
he made the moon for appointments. I should talk to my dentist about that.
Dentists don't know.
Johnny.
all right, well, here's this one. I'll let you read this one, especially the yellow part. All right.
Okay. These eventually led Jewish rabbis to call Saturn Shabbat, the star of the Sabbath. It was not until the first century of our era, when the planetary week had become an established institution, that the Jewish Sabbath seems always to have corresponded to Saturn's day. Rest days, early historical records clearly confirms that very early Gentile Christians also kept the same Sabbath as the Nazarenes. The practice was first arranged by Pope Sixtus in 126 AD and later officially changed by a royal Roman decree from the Emperor Constantine. Observance of the Sabbath day was made illegal, and observance of a fixed cycling planetary designated week
See,
was made.
fixed.
Yeah. Week was made mandatory for all except farmers. Previous to this time, the Roman Saturday was the first day of the Roman week. The veneration of the sun in the 2nd century AD began to pressure Roman culture and to change the first day of their week from Saturday to Sunday.
So, just like those pictures show.
Oh, the Romans changed their day to Sunday.
Yeah, it's all the Johnny. The calendar's been in a constant state of change, which most people are simply not aware of.
Yeah, it hasn't changed a whole bunch recently, which is probably partly why a lot of people aren't aware of changes, because for most people's have been alive today, it's been fairly constant.
Mhm.
So, I mean, here's another one for you.
Modern 7-day week came into use during the early imperial period after the Julian calendar came into effect. Johnny, can you go plug my phone in, please? Thank you. Apparently stimulated by immigration from the Roman East. For a while, it coexisted alongside the old 8-day nundinal cycle and fasti are known, which show both cycles. It is finally given official status by Constantine in 321. Even after Constantine's edict about Sunday, it took another generation or two for the 7-day week to catch on throughout the empire. The 24-hour system took longer, having to wait until the invention of the mechanical clock in the Middle Ages by monks anxious to observe the precision of their canonical hours. Before this, people marked the passage of time during the night by using the stars, and during the day by either by blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I basically sun
But the yellow part's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And that's from Encyclopedia, Roman calendar. So I'm just trying to find some good ones for you. The sunsets. That's just kind of the pattern the sun goes in. In fact, each season is not exactly 3 months like some people like to claim it is. And that comes into play, especially with me in the Southern Hemisphere right now. Our summer is shorter down here, if I remember correctly, or is it the other way around? No, yeah, it's shorter, which is counteracted with the more water around us, if I remember correctly. But anyways, it's not 3, 3, 3, and 3s. And this little circle, or this kind of figure 8 kind of shows that. In fact, this figure 8 will show up in sundials also.
Yeah, I remember when I was in New Zealand, summer was never long enough.
and we start seeing fall and winter be the
Here's another one for the 8-day week.
An 8-day week is clearly discernible on these stone fragments. Assumptions are dangerous, especially when they're made in the realm of religion. If a theological belief is based upon a faulty assumption, the religious practice will be an error. Most common assumptions in Christendom are that Saturday is the scriptural Sabbath and that Sunday is the day on which Yeshua was resurrected. These beliefs are built upon another assumption, that the modern week has cycled continuously and without interruption ever since creation. Facts of the Julian calendar, however, prove these assumptions false. The Julian calendar was established in 45 BC, like a calendar of the Roman Republic before it. The early Julian calendar had an 8-day week. Days of the week on the Republican and early Julian calendars were assigned letters A through H. All early Julian calendars, fasti, still have an existence date, from 63 BC to AD 37. That's actually interesting. It's absolute evidence.
Yeah. Oh, here's a
They
little.
could not have been following the Roman calendar.
Yeah. Here's a little picture for 3 types of days. It's
Let's see.
not much. Not much of a picture, but we can go over it real quick. Which is, hey, if I can click the right spot. Do that. Do this. So this one's off of Ezekiel 46.
Oh yes.
There, because it talks about how the weekdays.
Send me
it's-
this one.
Sure. Um, but I should make this folder shareable, so maybe I'll do that later and give you the link so you can just get all these pictures if you want them.
Yeah.
But it's talking how the gate shows that there's 3 types of days, because the east gate is shut on working days, the 6 working days. It's open on the Sabbath, weekly Sabbath, and it's
Mhm.
open on new moon days. So if new moon day is on Tuesday, is the gate open or closed?
If new moon day is on Tuesday,
Uh-huh.
doesn't matter. It's a new moon day.
Well, I know, but if
Open.
you talk to one who thinks the Gregorian calendar is the only calendar,
Right.
there's not a correct answer.
It's a paradox that they can't get their mind around.
Right. Now, us knowing that God's calendar is not the Gregorian calendar, it would be open, and other than it's a trick question, because then it wouldn't be Tuesday, right? Because it'd be new moon day, and Tuesday is not a biblical day of the week.
No, it's not.
So I mean, I did a trick question. I did a trick question for other people who are listening, but yeah, there's just 6 days shut. Weekly Sabbath open. New moon days open, which I believe it was open on transition days also. But anyways, because transition day is just a new moon day.
Yeah, I've actually had to think about that because but it would have to be, because otherwise you don't have your 6 days work rest.
Yeah. If without the lunar solar calendar, right, and the new moon days and transition days, your new moon day will fall on quite regularly on a work day, and then you don't get your 6 days of work that you're supposed to get, because new moon day is a non-work day. And so it you need that 3rd type of day with how what we're told about new moon days, because they're non-work days and worship days. Because otherwise you work a random number of days, then you have a worship day without this 3rd type of day, because new moon day is a non-work day and worship day. The only way to make it to work is it's its own type. Because nowhere are we told how many days to rest.
No. And also nowhere are we told that it's a contiguous 7-day
Cycle. No.
cycle.
As much as people want to claim that, it's nowhere in scriptures, and I know lots of scriptures that contradict that.
Yeah, First Samuel 20, 24-30, not being the least of them.
Correct. Let's go look at some of these other ones.
Because you had David and Jonathan resting
Yeah.
long time.
So one thing just about the calendar, this reminds me, Sep 7, it's not the 7th month. Oct 8, November 9, December 10. They're not in the right order. They're not in the right spots.
No, they're not.
At least currently. And so you can see by the names of the months that the new year actually was the spring. Because January 11, February 12, March. I mean, this is a little loose, right? Because the first part of the month, March, is not the first part of the year, but it's closer than January. So
Darn straight. You're more likely to have a hot day in March than in January.
yeah, that is for sure. Going back to the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
Well,
So
It's
This-
nearly 12.
this picture's of the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia. I don't know if you want to look at that. Do you want to look at that one?
Sound a little bit.
Yeah, sure, let's take a look.
Okay.
Oh, I thought that's what you're talking
Well,
about.
you don't
Church
have to
then.
chart it. You don't have to chart it. Do you?
Oh,
Is it at 12 or 20%?
hey, look at that. Because it has been a while.
No,
There
you
you go.
charged it last night.
All it is, Yamim
I don't
Tovim,
think it's not there
Yeah.
singular Yom Tov, corrupted in popular speech to Yom Tovim and Yom Tov. The Jewish holidays may be grouped under the following heads: Sabbath and New Moon, Rosh Hadesh, both periodically recurring in the course of the year. The new moon is still, the Sabbath originally was, dependent upon the lunar cycle. Both date back to the nomadic period of Israel. Originally, the new moon was celebrated in the same way as the Sabbath. Gradually, it became less important, while the Sabbath became more and more a day of religion and humanity, of religious meditation and instruction, of peace and delight of the soul, and produced powerful and beneficent effects outside of Judaism.
So that's the Universal and Jewish Encyclopedia.
Yep. Originally, the new moon was just as sacred as the Sabbath.
Let's see. That's just kind of
Actually, if
showing
you
how
could
the
send that to me, too, that would be awesome.
that's a duplicate. Put that up below it. This is kind of showing the week starting from Sunday to Saturday change and the 8 days in one picture.
Yeah.
These are quotes from some of the first videos in my Lunar Sabbath playlist, which is part of what really converted me to it.
Mhm.
I disagree with the author on how it should be determined on some aspects, but I'm grateful that he had that video on because it really kind of cemented it for me. Anyways, I mean, this is not going to be a big deal, but here's the dates that different countries adopted the Gregorian calendar,
Yep.
and they all adopted it at different times. Not everybody. No, seriously. I mean, to me, that's not a big deal, but I already kind of believe in the Lunar Sabbath, but maybe this will be.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like this idea that so God's calendar is perfect, can't be messed with, but you can pick it up anytime you want to.
Yeah. So
Anytime you feel like it, you'll be all right, mate.
So the United States was one of the last ones to accept the Gregorian one, at least according to this picture. This might not have all countries. This probably just has the major
United
countries.
States dropped 11 days upon me.
Well, it's because it took longer, and so more errors occurred. Because part of the problem with the Julian is they weren't handling that quarter day at all, if I remember correctly, or was it wrong? Anyways, I
Yeah.
have to go double check. But because they did it later, hundreds of about 200 years later, right? It
Yeah.
got more air. So instead of dropping,
It's actually remarkably simple. Theirs is actually remarkably low in terms of the error count when you get pull in places like Russia, Estonia.
like Russia dropped 13.
Yeah.
Because there was
China
1988.
and Japan 12
I think
each.
1918. Yeah,
Mhm.
China 12. So, yeah, I mean, if this is God's calendar, why wasn't everybody keeping it at the same time?
I'm telling you, it's perfect, it's sublime, it's awesome, and you can pick it up anytime you want to. Have it your way, man.
Sure,
Have it
that's
your
what
way.
people treat how they're supposed to worship God. Have it your way. So this picture,
We
nice.
believe in a Burger King God.
So this picture is nice. It's just basically the Ezekiel 46, where it
Yeah.
said closed and open, right?
Right.
There's a new moon day open, the Sabbath, and
But it doesn't include your transition day because there won't always be one, I guess.
no, it doesn't have that. And the one thing I don't like, sometimes when people have transition day, they put it over here on the under a work day,
Right.
where I put it over here under the non-work days. I don't know if you've noticed that. Most
Mhm.
people put transition day under a work day. I think
And
that's
that's
so
not-
wrong, and it
That's not right.
yeah, it's not a work day. It's a non-work day and a worship day. And so it I think it confuses even people who believe in the lunar Sabbath. Anyways, that's why I put mine on the right.
Yeah. I
Um,
think they put theirs on the left because they're still thinking a little bit Gregorian.
Probably. Hopefully it's just more they didn't know what to do, but like on this one from World's Last Chance, they have it the same color as the normal work day. So when people say that lunar Sabbatarians sometimes have this extra day, well, with some of the pictures that are out there, I don't blame them for thinking that, but I mean, we don't, or we shouldn't, right? I mean, some people might, but I don't. Because not everybody does it correctly.
I don't think you should, but
No, you shouldn't. It's a non-work day and worship day. Because it's a
Yeah.
new moon day, right? But anyways,
right,
so those are the pictures.
cool.
I have a few more. Well, I don't know if they're more of the list that I already showed you, but we can go look at some of the 3 types of day verses.
I'm gonna go, yeah, tomorrow. I mean, basically what I've been doing is trying to just outline where I'm going. But tomorrow I'm just gonna start crafting it, put it on PowerPoint,
Okay.
get myself I've got to get myself a mouse that works.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Because otherwise I'm left having to type everything in by hand, not working for me.
Yeah, copy paste is a wonderful invention.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it's not working for me. So tomorrow, with Matt being off, I'm going to go over and Walmart and get myself either a wired or a wireless mouse because I've got to be able to.
Yeah, I like wired personally, but
Yeah.
I avoid wireless as much as I can.
Well, because the more wireless you have, the more cancer rays you have dancing around your house.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Right.
Well, and then there's also security issues, but and battery issues. So there's more to it than just that, but yes, that is part of the reason I don't like it. But anyway,
that and a wired mouse is actually usually cheaper.
probably, yeah. The wired isn't sexy. But
When
anyway,
will the new moon be gone that we may sell corn, and the Sabbath that we may set forth wheat, making the ephah small and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances by deceit?
so this one's basically saying that you can't sell, aka work, on new moon day, right?
Mhm.
It's like a Sabbath. Here, 2 Kings 4:23. And he said, wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon day nor Sabbath. And he said, it will be well, because it was a work day. It lists the 3 types of days right there.
Mhm.
So, I mean, yeah, you can't, there's things you can't do on new moon day, like the Sabbath. That's why it's listed there. That's why he's making sure it's not one of those 2 days.
Yep.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, bud, how you doing?
Good. Just trying to help Ben with his upcoming presentation, just giving him some ideas.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
And I
So
kind
when
of,
is your final presentation?
It's on Wednesday.
Oh, okay. So we switched the day to Wednesdays. now?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, I had full control of that, so
Oh,
I
hell
took
yeah.
full advantage of my full control.
Of your full control.
Yes, that's right.
You had full control, Stephen. Guess what? Full control.
he's a
Full
control freak.
control. Oh my gosh. I thought I was a control freak.
Satan wants full control too.
Oh man. I knew it.
I
living
don't,
with
I don't
Satan.
want,
I
I don't,
knew it. I'm living with Satan. No, I'm kidding.
I don't want full control, but if I get it, I'm gonna take full advantage of it.
Yeah, anyways.
Oh.
So, Second Kings, I think it's pretty clear that it's 3 types of days, right?
Oh, yeah,
You said 3
And
types of days?
3 types of days, work day, new moon day, Sabbath.
Okay, gotcha. And the new moon day was like what, transitionary period into the Sabbath kind of deal?
No, it's you have your new moon day, you have 4 Sabbaths, then you may have a transition day,
Oh gosh, you
but
got
the transition day and the new moon day
so
are
the
both
new moon begins a new new
Sabbath cycle.
Sabbath cycle. Basically. Like what we've been talking about already. I'm just trying to catch up.
sure, I was, just to help you catch up a little more, I was
Mhm.
recommending to Ben that first part of his presentation should be about the problems and changes in the Gregorian calendar to prime their mind to be more accepting that the
Yeah.
Gregorian calendar isn't God's calendar. So when he starts bringing in these other things, they'll be more ready to accept it.
Yes.
And I'm also suggesting that after talking about the problems and changes of the Gregorian calendar, talk about 3 types of days,
Yeah.
which then naturally leads into Lunar Sabbath. But anyways, I was trying to,
Yeah.
First Samuel 20 is another one that shows 3 types of days, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Let's see. I mean, those other ones, I gave you the list on the picture. I don't have them all down here, but
I've got that list on I've got that list in my messenger now, so it should be good.
also, the day-to-day sacrifices. The law of Moses shows there's 3 types of days, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the work
Monthly.
days had set sacrifices, Sabbath had set sacrifices, and new
Mhm.
moon day had set sacrifices.
Yep.
And Torah doesn't say anything what to do if the Sabbath and new moon day land on each other. You know why it
Right.
doesn't say that? It's because they never do. They never land on the same day. It also never states what to do if new moon day is on a weekday, because guess what? It never happens on God's
Yeah.
calendar. Never.
Never.
Yeah,
Never,
it's a
ever, ever.
It actually is a perfect calendar.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's out of man's control
Oh.
completely, because it's up in the heavens.
You mean I can't just reach up and tweak something?
You mean?
Uh, yeah, oh, here's another new moon celebration. Second Chronicles.
What's the name of it?
Okay, for the burnt offerings, morning, evening, and on the Sabbaths, and on the new moons, and on the solemn feasts of
Yeah.
our Lord our God.
That's talking about the law of Moses.
Law of
there.
Moses.
Mhm.
A lot of stuff in Deuteronomy, especially
Mhm.
chapter 1, is on a new moon day. A lot of that's there.
Mhm.
But I mean, that doesn't prove it's another type of day, but just kind of general information for you.
Yeah.
We got that one. Yeah, so here's just new moon day, right? Deuteronomy.
Mhm.
1. Ezekiel. Here's stuff that's coming on new moon day, but that's not necessarily saying it's a third type, but anyways.
Right.
Joshua should be there too. But
Mhm.
anyways, this was
Mhm.
a picture I screenshotted from somebody else.
Are you stealing from people?
No, I'm
Not stealing.
because it's just scripture. I mean, I shouldn't say just
know.
scripture. It's scripture, and I accepted it as my own now, just like Yeshua did from what the Father taught him.
It was a joke.
Yeah, but it wasn't funny.
I know.
Yeah, that's true.
Still, it was a
Funny
joke.
that way.
Courtesy laugh, people. Come on.
And then I would say after you talked about 3 types of days, talk about the lunar Sabbath, because then you've primed them for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can show that from the Exodus, 3 moons in a row. And there's
Mm-hmm.
no other answer for that. 2 maybe, because like February, but
Mhm.
3 in a row? Yeah, there's
Right.
at that point, if they reject it, they're just hard-hearted. Because the scriptures clearly show it.
And then and then just throw Isaiah 66, 22, and 23 at them just for good measure.
Sure. That shows 2 types of days, right? But yeah.
No, but I'm not talking about showing them the types of the days. It's like, this is what God's people are going to be doing. They're
Sure.
going to be worshiping from new moon to new moon. And from Sabbath.
Sabbath to
Yeah,
Sabbath.
Sabbath to Sabbath. You guys can reject this if you want to, but you can't call yourself God's people if you do.
Yeah. Well, the foolish virgins will reject it, because those 5 foolish virgins have to do with worship of God.
Mhm.
They really do.
And the seal of the Lord really is on the Sabbath day.
Well, the 3 Sabbaths, because there's 3 types of Sabbaths:
Right.
the weekly, the moonly, and the yearly.
Mhm.
Those are
Yeah.
all Sabbaths.
That is the seal of God.
The 6 year, you're talking about the Shemitah versus the.
No,
No.
the weekly Sabbath.
I'm talking the yearly. I'm talking the year.
Yearly are your great feasts.
Oh,
The high holidays.
I thought you were talking about your Jubilee year.
No, I
versus-
wasn't bringing that in.
Okay. I was just
fact,
curious.
I mean, I have my own theory about when it is, but I don't have any hard evidence or
Well, you've got to know when one was. So you can do the math.
yeah, I don't know if there's any sign to do that one off of.
Right.
That one might just be pure count. I have no idea. I
Well,
don't know
it
what
really,
to say.
if you look in the law,
The law does give.
it's
some
simple. All it is about specific. It is about counting. It's about counting your years. 7 years
Sure.
7th year
is
is a
Jubilee.
Sabbath.
Is Jubilee year.
Well,
No, the
Jubilee
50th.
is 50.
Sorry, the 7th year is a Shemitah year.
Yeah. So here's an example on this that corresponds with the lunar Sabbath, because lunar Sabbath has these extra worship days, right? The
Right.
Jubilee is an extra land Sabbath,
Year. An extra
Right.
land Sabbath, yeah.
because you have your
Yeah.
sevens and then another one.
Yep.
It
Yep.
follows the
Seven.
pattern of the lunar Sabbath and the new moon. After so
Yeah.
many, there's another one right after it, just like the new moon day.
Oh, my word, yeah.
It's
You're
another
kidding.
witness. It's the same pattern.
I know.
Instead
God.
of 4, it's 7, but it's the same basic pattern, right?
Yeah.
God's amazing.
Amen to that, brother.
Shoot. You know, I felt today was an interesting day. It's probably one of the worst work days I've ever had, but I still got a lot accomplished, regardless of what the crap, whatever crap they threw at me.
Mhm.
I still got a lot accomplished, but I could feel the hand of the Lord strengthening me through it. But at the same time, it felt, and it could just be me. It could just be me, but it felt like there was a little bit of judgment and a little bit of justice thrown down on me. But he still upheld me through the judgment. It was weird in a way.
Sure.
It was almost paradoxical in a way. Like he held me up. He supported me today, but yet it felt like it was his justice and his judgment coming down on me. Just a
Well,
little.
he might be winking at you, and the winking will only last so long.
Right. Winking. Wink, 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 wink.
Well, it, it's
Yeah,
like
the problem with living in Babylon is that
so
when you have a Sabbath that on their calendar is shifting monthly.
Yeah, I'm always working. Right.
well, it depends on so by law they have to give you your religious holidays off by law.
Yeah, that's true. I need to.
So
I'll go in and communicate a little bit.
the one thing that can be a little more tricky with the lunar Sabbath is that it's changing according to the calendar that they have, right?
Yeah.
But
Right.
I have my calendar that you can go give far in advance, and especially depending on what your job actually is. They may actually like it most of the time because you'll work on days that other people are fighting to get off.
Right. That's true.
So there's pros and cons to it, if anything, because most of the time you will have no qualms to take a day where other people want off.
Right.
Mhm.
That's true.
So if anything, it might be a blessing for them and you also.
Yes.
It just, and you can use my app to go get them as far as ahead as you want.
You're right. You're right. I could.
And
I
just
could.
just use the app. I mean, we just earlier we did Ben's birthday.
I already, and I went to the app and I used it, and it was a beautiful thing. It worked beautifully. No hiccups.
Yeah, I have an update on my phone where I'm not loading the yearlies, so it starts up a lot faster. But you can
Oh yeah. Oh no. It has started up a lot faster.
see, I don't have the yearlies turned on and it loads a lot faster, but I'm having a
Yeah.
problem with deployment right now. But anyways, but those two yearlies is what slows it down on startup.
Damn. Oh, hey, bud. I'm doing all right. I'm sorry. I just.
So another thing that I would bring in, because I think this is kind of like aha, but maybe it's because I thought of it with God's help, obviously. But
Nothing like self-aggrandizing.
but I mean, the lunar cycle change happened according to the creation prophecy.
That's the other scripture I was looking for. 2 Kings 28 through 11.
Oh yeah, that's about the
I
lunar
actually
cycle.
plan to do something with that.
Yeah, so I have a couple here: Isaiah, 2 Kings, 2 Chronicles, and Daniel 2. So there's 4 that actually talk about it that I know of. There might be more, but those are the ones that I know of. But it happened within the 4th millennium, which represents the 4th day, which is when the sun and the moon were appointed, because before that, you could just do your constant count of 30 days and know where you're at. After
Mhm.
that, you actually really needed the sun and the moon.
And that's Daniel 2, what?
21.
Okay.
So this one's actually talking God changes the times, meaning he changed the lunar cycle. Because it went from a constant 30 to going
Something
from
less.
29.2 to 29.9, which sometimes gives us and doesn't give us a transition day. Hence, it changed. It changed,
Sure.
it did and it didn't, right? If that makes
Right.
sense. Because the way to determine it never changed, really,
Mhm.
in that you're always supposed to use the sun and the moon to determine them, but you didn't have to. You could have just counted.
Right.
You always should have, but you didn't always have to. Where in the fourth day, millennium, you had to. At 700 BC, you had to. And a lot of cultures didn't handle it correctly. And that's why you got all these calendar garbage going on.
Mhm.
I mean, China's probably the biggest country that has a different calendar than the Gregorian that's aware of. Right.
Yeah.
I think they're losing it though, because they're trying to go with society more and more. But
Right.
the other one is Muslims, but they still go by the Gregorian, except by the holidays, which is what the Orthodox Jews do too, right? Except for the holidays,
Right.
Gregorian.
Right.
And they do their lunar Sabbath they do their weekly Sabbath according to the Gregorian,
Mhm.
because they caved, as we read earlier, right? Around 300 AD. I don't remember.
Yeah, they got tired of being lion food.
So on that point, you'll like these two verses. I show verses that it's prophesied that they'll lose the Sabbath.
Mhm.
So people will turn to the Jews to know when the Sabbath is, but the scriptures actually say that they'll lose it. So why are you going to them?
Mhm.
Right there. They lost it. They don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Lamentations and Hosea. They lost it. And history shows it too, like with Hillel II. But anyways.
Yep. Actually, that's a really good introduction to Hillel II.
Sure. Yeah, that would be. Yeah. Because it's using scripture.
Mhm. Have the
Um,
prophecy, bam. There it happened.
yeah. Yeah. So that's basically how I would approach it. But I honestly do believe if you try to give them this God calendar without showing the problems of the Gregorian, it'll just bounce off because they'll still be in Gregorian mode completely.
Yeah. Mhm. Well, sometimes you have to go in there with a big old cannon.
Yeah, well, you can be nice about it, but
Well, I
if
mean,
this is about
but still, when you go out there and immediately drop you guys been had, you bamboozled.
well, you can work your way backwards on the Gregorian, where I kind of went forward, I guess you could, to some degree, right? But
Mhm.
or maybe a little all over, but anyways, you can start with, what was it, 1582, if I remember right. You can go
Mhm.
1582 to the Julian, and the Julian 7, and then before that was 8, and before that had the
Actually, I think
moon, and then before that,
there's something that's coming to my mind.
what?
You need to ask two really important questions. Where in the scriptures does it say that Saturday is the Sabbath?
It doesn't, but I know what people will
No.
use.
Yeah, but still, does it say Saturday?
No, it doesn't.
No. Secondly, where in the scriptures does it say that time has flowed in a continuous 7-day cycle from time of creation?
It doesn't. In fact, scriptures contradict that when you look at the whole canon.
And that really actually sets up the canon blast.
Sure, you could do that.
Those two questions.
Yeah. Another one that's, I think, somewhat related, I don't know if it would fit in very well, is, does the scripture say only take one day of rest?
Mhm. Actually, that is another good question.
Because nowhere does it say how many days of rest it is, or it should be, because right now there's 3 lengths. 1, which is the most common, 2 and 3. In Noah's time, it was 1 or 3.
Right.
We have the extra because of the lunar cycle change, where it's 1, 2, or 3. Noah had 1 or 3.
Yeah. So that's, yeah, I think I've got a lot of good stuff to really get something together tomorrow so that I can, and I'll appreciate your prayers
I'll do that.
as because this is a message that the Lord has put it on my heart that these people need to receive or need to have. Whether they need to hear, whether they receive it or not is entirely up to them.
Yeah, but you're there to throw out the seeds. So, well, in not particularly the group that you're associated with, but God's been putting that on my heart. Look at all my research I've done that you've been looking at, and we just looked at some again.
Yeah.
And my app I wrote, right? I didn't just do that because it was fun.
No, that's
It's been kind of stressful,
that kind of
actually.
that kind of an app is it's a lot of math, a lot of math.
It
It's
is a lot of math.
work. It's a life's work.
Yeah, and there's still improvements I want to do even to some of the math, actually.
Mhm.
Just it's minor, it's not major, but
Mhm.
anyways. And I want to add alarms. I actually want to add the distance to the moon too on there. There's things I can still add. It's just I have other things I
Is
need
that
to do also.
is that relevant?
Not per se, but it's kind of interesting, and it's
Okay.
because it, yeah, anyways, I'll just leave it at that.
Not. I mean, I didn't say that. I wasn't saying that to like poo-poo it or anything. It's like,
Oh, it's just going to be one little liner on
is
there.
there? Does it actually? I mean, does that mean it was actually more a genuine question? Does it mean something?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
More what I would probably add, that this would be definitely the pro, is tell you exactly where the moon is right now, so you could go find it and use the compass in the phone to go find it. So there's still things I would like to add, but
That's pretty cool.
I don't know that math yet. That way. But there's stuff that still do in it. It's just the primary part is done. Like I told you, I have the update coded for making it load faster. I'm just having problems with release mode. But anyways, that's because it's working in debug mode on my phone right now. It doesn't work in release mode on my phone, which and I'm having a hard time tracking down why. And so the update may just have to wait until a couple months when it's .NET 7 ready, because Microsoft is not fixing some of the bugs now. And I think it's actually something that Microsoft introduced, because I've done some research on it and other people are having the same problem. So it just may wait and have till .NET 7 is ready. Sorry, guys. It works on my device. Not that it helps you. Anyways, developers say that a lot. It works on my computer.
I love it when I hear that. I'm just like, well, that's great. Bully for you.
Yeah. Good for me. For some people, it's a little annoying that it takes a while for it to start. Sorry. I do have an update, and I just didn't realize how big of a problem it was when I pushed it, because it runs faster on my computer, and then I guess I have a better phone than some people. So I didn't, it's not as big as issue for me. I can tell the difference. It just wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're all right, dude. I
Just
like
start it, go take a snack, and then come back to it, I guess. I don't.
it.
It's just those yearly pages have tons of controls on it, and that's the problem.
Okay.
Because it has the underlines for the holidays.
Yeah.
And World's Last Chance one doesn't do that, if I remember correctly. Let me go check. But on the Gregorian mode, mine has both numbers.
Does World's Last Chance use the dark conjunction, or do they use first sighting?
So they use dark conjunction, but they go by dawn, and they actually go by astronomical dawn, which there's no shadows, and you cannot discern when that is. No one has it. People who claim dawn.
That's setting yourself up for a lie. That's just not
Oh,
cool.
right. And I mean, you should watch my video about when the day starts. I talk about that. You can't discern it. And I even there's scriptures in the King James that are mistranslated to dawn, where it should be sunrise. And I go through some of those in that video. I go to Bible Hub and show it should be this. And I talk about why. You can't discern with your naked eye astronomical dawn, but that's when they use it, which is basically midnight. They're basically using midnight.
Oh, that's rubbish.
It is. I mean, they're trying to be somewhat scriptural about it because they're saying dawn, but they're doing astronomical dawn, which is basically midnight. Because that's when light and dark are even, actually, and that's why they're using it. And they claim to do anything else would mean that the moon is ruling when the sun is there, but that's fine. The sun rules when the moon's out during the day, so their
Why can't
logic
the moon
is
rule while the
not
sun's
sound.
out?
Huh?
Like, if the sun rules when the moon is out, why can't the moon rule when the sun's out?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But that's the one-sided logic that they use to justify astronomical dawn.
Yeah, well, my whole thing is that's still remnants and leftover of sun worship.
Maybe I can see that to some degree, but I don't think that's their reasoning on it.
I'm
I
sure
think
that's
they
not
just-
the reasoning that they put to it.
Well, anyways,
But
so I believe sunrise, and considering that we have examples in the Tanakh and Dead Seas that they used a sundial to determine the hours, sundial doesn't work until sunrise, because you need the
Yep.
direct light, not deflected light or diffused light to get shadows.
Yep,
And so that's why sunrise, it just, and you can discern sunrise.
I've never
It's-
seen it. I've never seen a shadow except for when the sun was up.
Well, I have stayed up all night multiple times with the idea of thinking and seeing and observing these things. And I've recorded them. I need to put them all on YouTube, but I have parts of one that's in that other recording of when the day starts. That's from a GoPro of me actually recording, doing research on this. Instead of just being book smart, you need street smart. You need to put the two together. And these people who say the day start at dawn, they're basing it off of bad translations.
Mm-hmm.
And And when I ask, how do you discern dawn? How did the priests determine dawn? No one gives me an answer. They go away.
Yeah,
Where it's very easy to discern sunrise.
yeah.
Piece of cake. There's no arguments against that one.
Mhm.
For one, just watch it. And you can watch the shadows too. That's when the
Yeah.
shadows happen. And that's what sundials use.
Mhm.
Anyways.
So yeah, I think I'm actually in a pretty good place now.
Okay.
I think I kind of need to. I think it's kind of time for me to go.
Okay. Well, it's probably a good time for me too then. And say bye to Matt and Andrew for me.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I hope you have yourself a great day, a
You
great
too.
week.
Okay. Take care.
We will see you next Sabbath.
Yeah. And good luck on your recording. And when it's on YouTube, tell me, I'll watch it. I'm not
Okay.
going to join it. It's just not my crowd. Sorry.
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, I guess I
Alrighty.
could if you really want. I could try if you want me to help you if you need it, but you got the basics. I think the main thing I added is maybe some additional things and maybe how to maybe approach it a little bit better, right?
Yeah. I like the structure that I'm working with now,
Okay.
where I'm thinking about it now.
I just think you need to approach it. Main point first is show the problems in the Gregorian calendar, so that way they'll be more open to something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that as being the most effective way, because like I said, my main objective is to get people to change,
Sure. And
to go to the law.
the Gregorian calendar is going to be the biggest problem on them accepting Yahweh's calendar. It just is. I've been doing it for a while. I
Yeah.
got a little experience under my belt. It's the Gregorian
Mhm.
calendar. People think it's a godsend when it's a Satan send.
Yeah. It is a godsend, after a manner of speaking.
We call it his world.
Yep.
But that's why I said Satan. It's a Satan
Yeah.
send.
Yeah. All righty. Well, you take it
anyways.
easy.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.